Hi folks, how you all doing? I feel like I should be playing darts now. After that music, you know, it's like going up to the hockey. Anyway, okay. So, as I was correctly introduced, I am Cillian. I'm from the Irish Deloitte practice. I serve two functions in our practice. My first is I am the solution and the business development lead for our blockchain lab. The blockchain lab is a piece of the business which is 25 people today. We're growing to 50 by the end of the year, and we work across the EMEA region developing blockchain capability, strategies, proof of concepts, right through to production and development. Okay? What I'm going to talk to you today about is a couple of things. One, we're going to look at the hype behind blockchain, and there's a lot of hype and there's a lot of rubbish out there, okay? So we're going to talk about that. We're then going to look at what it takes to get towards production. And I'm going to help you think about a few things that we think about when we work on blockchain in the lab, okay? So to start with, blockchain is absolutely at the top of the hype cycle. There is no doubt about that. This is Gartner's hype cycle. And they position it right at the top. And that's for a number of reasons, okay? Everybody's talking about it. Everybody's looking at it. You know, everybody's heard about what blockchain is. When you actually ask people to explain it or to describe it, they really, really struggle, okay? So we know it's hype, okay? The hype is probably also reflected in the prices of some of the coins in some of the markets. So we will have seen Bitcoin going from about $200 about 18 months ago to about $1,600, $1,700 today. Ethereum coins, Ether coins, they've gone from about 89 cents 18 months ago to 89 euros today, or somewhere, or $89. Huge, huge changes, okay? So a lot of hype, a lot of hysteria. But what we're doing is we're falling down into what they call the trough of disillusionment. And people are saying, is blockchain really going to work? Is it going to stick? You know, is everybody going to be able to converge to agree with standards to make this happen? So what we're seeing now is a lot more, I guess, shrewdness. That's a good word. People being shrewd around, is blockchain going to work? Is it real? How are we going to put it into practical effect? And we'll talk about that. But what we can say is that definitely the hype is starting to get a little bit justified. And I say a little bit. In terms of investment, these are the figures. 2017, 600 million invested in blockchain. Previous to that, it's doubled since 2014. Ripple, one of the payments protocols, they've received 94 million just in investment alone from financial institutions, maybe reflective of PSD2. So there's a lot of things definitely happening. The other piece is that if we look at consortium, we've seen growth from relatively small numbers to big numbers. So for example, Hyperledger has gone from 30 to 100 participants in a year. R3, 40 to 70, although that's actually in decline now, R3. Ripple, 20 to 30. And what we're also seeing is examples of pilots. So last year, people were talking about proof of concepts. The year before, people were mainly doing their learning. Now, what we're seeing is it's going to pilot. And we're actually looking at production models as well, or we're starting to. Some of the really interesting examples, for me, the standout one is Northern Trust, what they've done in private equity. I think that's a really good example. They piloted and they targeted this with the authorities in the Channel Islands, and they built it. And I think that was a very good one. But there are others. So activity is also increasing. And activity is increasing in terms of patents. And yearly patent grants have shot up in terms of blockchain. What's really interesting is the fact that about 2 years ago, the most advanced firm in the world on blockchain, believe it or not, were Goldman Sachs. Okay? They have been completely caught up and taken over by Bank of America Merrill Lynch. So that's kind of a big change that's happened. But I think the fact that patents are being developed tells its own story. It's also interesting that patents are developed for blockchain because blockchain by its nature is open source, shared, everything else. But actually what you can see is all these banks trying to go in and put their arms around and say, this is my blockchain, you can all go away. But that's what we're seeing, okay? In terms of deployments, we're starting to see a lot more ramping up. For example, ourselves, we're working with 3 clients in the lab today to bring to production blockchain by the end of this year. And we're integrating with core systems. So that is underway. And what we're also seeing, unlike any other technology, or unlike most technologies, is we're seeing regulator involvement. Huge, huge regulator plays. It's interesting, if you were to go to the Bank of England or someone like that and ask them about a Temenos implementation or a Mises implementation or one of the traditional vendors, they'd laugh at you. They'd say, what are you talking about? Why are you wasting my time? Ask them about blockchain. They've got a white paper. They've got this. They've got that. They've got the other. So they're really trying to get engaged. Our biggest piece of work in terms of regulators has been with the Hong Kong Monetary Authority. With them, we developed a supply chain proof of concept. That was with 8 participating banks. That was published about 6 to 7 weeks ago, and that will go to production by the middle of next year. They're hugely advanced on it. The Bank of England, the Fed, the Monetary Authority in Singapore. And I would say if 2 are most advanced, it's probably Hong Kong and Singapore. And they seem to be in this dogfight. We want to do supply chain. And both of them, either trade finance, supply chain, and they're in this fight between them. Hong Kong's a better port, no, Singapore's a better port. And it all goes with their trade and their commerce and maybe their history as well. So, we're not there yet, okay? So, why is it taking time, or what is it that's slowing us down? Well, it's interesting because actually we're going quicker than we thought we were. So in 2015, Oliver Wyman, one of our consulting competitors, they came out and they said, blockchain or distributed ledger technology will not be in place or will not see real production for 10 years. The very next year, McKinsey came out and they said, blockchain's full potential will be reached in 5 years. Okay, so it's halved. Earlier this year, IBM came out and they said 65% of banks will have blockchain in production in 3 years. So maybe in 2018 we'll get one saying that we'll have it in 12 to 18 months, okay? And that's what we're definitely starting to see. In terms of the accelerators, I think competitors are looking to invest. Everybody's talking about blockchain. It's amazing the rooms we can get into, right? When I used to work for a software company, I used to sell capability for investment data management. And I'd ring up, Prudential Insurance in Asia or whoever it was, some big insurance company. I'd say, can I get a meeting? And they'd laugh. Or they wouldn't laugh, they'd just hang up the phone. Or then they'd talk to me and they'd say, yeah, sounds interesting, but no. Ask about blockchain. Absolutely, come in, please come in. We went to Hong Kong recently. Prudential wheeled out their chairman, their global chairman, to talk about blockchain. This is kind of the level it's got to. So everybody's interested in it. The second thing is that what's going to drive financial services towards it is the fact that other industries are adopting it quicker. If you think about it, financial services is actually a tough area for blockchain. It's tough because it's a regulated market, okay? Whereas if I wanted to put blockchain on for Uber, or if I wanted to put it in the pharma industry or into the fast-moving consumer goods industry, it'd be a whole lot easier. So that's another thing that's slowing us down. The fact that these companies or these young startup companies who are working on blockchain, they've never had to deal with this red tape. They've just gone and done it themselves. But now they're having to deal, and they've also almost got to become kind of converge to the mainstream, I guess. Use cases are closer to production, for sure. Investment is scaling. Investment has gone through the roof. So as I say, last year 600 million. In total, we're somewhere near around 2 billion. As I said, the biggest indicator is the investment in the coins themselves. So there were a couple of ICOs, so initial coin offerings a couple of weeks ago by new startups. Melonport was one, for example. Melonport put out their coins. They launched them at, I think it was $20. Within the space of a couple of hours, they were 35. Now they're about 39. And we're seeing this across industry. The same with Ethereum. Ethereum coins going from 89 cents 18 months ago to in around $85 to $89 today. Okay, and that's exponential. That's just going to keep on going up. Okay, so we're seeing that. We're also seeing regulator involvement. As I said on the previous slide, it's high. It's not typical, which is interesting. But that said, there's a lot of things holding it back. So what's holding it back? Well, the first thing is there's a lack of standards. Okay, what is a standard blockchain? Who knows? One of the projects we're working on at the moment is a KYC utility for the asset servicing industry. There's a new AML4 directive that's coming out. You ask all the banks to read it, they each read it a different way. So, Bank 1, let's just say, for argument's sake, State Street. They read it, okay, this is our interpretation. Next bank, BNY Mellon, this is our interpretation, so on and so forth. They cannot agree on the standards between themselves, and always they have their kind of cap on which we're definitely right. There are lawyers. We don't trust State Street lawyers, or we don't trust our competitors' lawyers. So that's going to be hugely difficult in terms of getting standards. One, in reading legislation and reading regulation and reading actual banking requirements, but also on the technical side. What are my standard interfaces going to be? How do I integrate? And all that sort of stuff. The second thing is operational challenges. So one of the big problems that we've seen is that firms coming to us looking to implement blockchain, they want to implement it on top of a bad process. okay? So they come and they say, we've got this great idea for blockchain, we're going to integrate it to our systems. Brilliant. Well, your systems are rubbish because you never re-engineered your processes like you should have 10 years ago. Why? Because there was a global financial crisis and you had to meet regulatory requirements. So we need to look at that, right? Do you build on top of existing legacy infrastructure, or do you just start somewhere completely different and maybe start outside your existing bank? Third one is it requires the network effect, okay? Blockchain's brilliant, but it's like a mobile telephone. If you're talking to your phone like this on your own, it's useless. You got to have someone on the other line, okay? Blockchain is the same. If you don't have that network, it's a waste of time. You got to have industry-wide buy-in. Yes and no. My partner, one of our partners put this point in. He's correct in some ways. Yes, you need industry participation, but do you need industry-wide buy-in? No. The reason I say that is, think of Netflix. Did Netflix go to Blockbuster and all their competitors and say, guys, we're going to build this thing in the cloud and you're going to be able to view videos. Do you want to participate? No, they didn't. They went and they built it themselves and they took the market and everybody migrated to them and now Blockbuster are dead. So yes and no, you need buy-in, but to a certain extent. Security concerns, like everything, by its nature, blockchain is probably safer than most existing technologies just on the basis of the sharing and the replication of data and with a lot of the cryptography capability. But still there are concerns. It's not fully proven. And there's a lack of awareness. And it's also not proven in production environments. If you came to us as a bank and we were Deloitte Consulting and you said, we want to put in a new core banking system, how much is it going to cost over 5 years? What's the total cost of ownership? What's the implementation effort? What skills do we need? We could tell you very well, like to quite a precise art. We could say it's going to cost you 5 million a year. The implementation is going to be 3 million. These are just example figures, but you get the point. Ask me about blockchain. How long is a piece of string? And that's the reality, right? And the reality is that if Ether coins have gone from 89 cents to $85 in 18 months, what are they going to do in another 18 months? And if you've got to use Ether coins to process on the Ethereum network, how much is it going to cost you? Don't know. I can't tell you. I would be lying if I told you, if I gave you an answer. So it's not been proved. The other question is around scalability. Do blockchain scale? And we'll come on to that in a second. But these are some really key points, just in terms of remembering those. So the technology, though, is evolving, right? So it's realized that it has these problems. It realizes it has these challenges. So what we've seen is processing capacity. People are trying to up that. They've done that through a few things. So they've tried to make private blockchains between them where they can get the consensus mechanism down to a proof of authority. So it works a lot quicker. You don't need the consensus of 10 minutes on the Bitcoin blockchain, for example. Data storage. People have also realized blockchain is not good for data storage. Keep it off the chain. Just have your transactions. Have it as your ledger and keep stuff elsewhere. Enterprise applications. So instead of everybody being scared that everything is going to go out to an Ethereum network or to a Bitcoin network or whatever it is, what we're seeing is this idea of private networks. So private blockchain networks. And we're also seeing advances in cryptography. Big fear there in terms of quantum computing. Could quantum computing kill the blockchain? Could it figure out the cryptography? So huge challenges there. But what I would say is the biggest change is actually what we're seeing in terms of the maturity of our clients and their thinking about blockchain. And this is important because a lot of firms will try and sell you blockchain. They'll just say, oh yeah, we're a blockchain house and just buy blockchain. It's not the right approach. What we think about is, you're here today, right? You're at your current business model, okay? And you want to get up to there. You want to get to your future business model. So think about that as your starting point, okay? So we want to be a seamless, great experience bank for our customers who are only millennials. Okay, maybe that's your vision. Well, you start with digital evolution activities. Okay, you're not going to get there overnight. So what we say is start with digital evolution, efficiency-driven, robotic process automation, enhanced data management, all these sorts of things. But you've also got to come top-down. So you've got to think about digital transformation. You cannot not have both. You have to have both of these sides of the equations. Most banks, being honest, they focus there. They only focus there. They don't think about this. Or they think about this in an incorrect manner, and we'll talk about that in a second. But you need to. And where you'll get to then is the landing business model. But you really need to think about, have we got these? Because this is what's going to give you more immediate ROI. And then you got to think about, up here, how we make that work for the bank, and how it aligns to this. Because a lot of people are doing digital transformation activities, but all they are science projects. They're really nice projects, they look cool and they sound cool, and we've got this innovation lab and we've got this, that, and the other. It's a load of rubbish because they don't produce ROI and they're not getting integrated into their businesses. So what we would say is that no technology and no single approach is a panacea, okay? You need really 3 things. The first thing is you got to have skills. And you can't just have one single skill set, right? Just having a load of innovation people in a room, useless. Absolutely useless. You need everyone. You need the digital people, you need the operational people, you need the people who understand regulation, compliance, because you've got to align behind that vision and where you want to get to. The second thing is be agnostic in your terms of your selection criteria for technologies. Don't just go in with the mentality that we have to build this on blockchain. Blockchain might be the answer, but it also might not be the answer. There could be a better option, which is, for example, a payments technology that's built on a traditional database. And that might work in that instance. And the third thing is focus on value, okay? Be very, very clear in terms of your business case definition, your ROI, what it is you're expecting to achieve, okay? You've really, really got to think about that. If you can't align your project to this, don't do it. Because as I say, it'll be a science project. It'll be nicely done. You'll get a nice presentation, a PowerPoint deck. It'll be put onto a shelf, and no one will invest in it in the future because you cannot show the path to value. So I think that's really, really important. So the other thing I would say is that you also need to be bold in your thinking. If you are going to go down this blockchain road, you've got to be very, very brave. And I say that because you've got to think completely differently to the way you think today. You've got to think about a disintermediated world where everything and everybody can be connected, okay? So what does that mean? Well, let's think about the bank of the future for a minute. The last presentation talks about challenger banks and the banks of the future. I'm going to make a statement now which may scare some of you, might challenge some of you, but think about this. When people see that slide on LinkedIn, you know, Uber is the largest ground transportation company, yet it has no taxis or vehicles. Airbnb is the largest provider of accommodation, but it has no hotel rooms or real estate. Alibaba is the world's largest commerce site, but it has no stores or it has no inventory. Okay? Amazon is the world's biggest bookshop, but it has no stores. Well, it does now, but it didn't back then. Think about this. The largest bank in the future will have no balance sheet. Think about that. Just think about that. And think about another side. Insurance companies. The largest insurer of the future will underwrite no premiums. Right? That's this digital platform play. So as I say, if you want to think about that, you've got to think in a very, very different way, because you're not going to be charging traditional fees. You're not going to be making money from cash that's sitting on deposit in your bank. You're going to have to do something that's very, very different. You're going to have to connect people, and you're going to have to work out a fee and a mechanism that works out that. So what we would say is identify your bold play, right? And identify the participants in the value chain, okay? Not just you. Open yourselves up to the ecosystem. Open yourself up to be disrupted. Because if you don't cannibalize yourself, someone will eat you. The second piece is design the solution, analyze the commercials and the roadblocks. Figure out the roadblocks quickly, because you need to start working on those fairly quickly to get the project momentum going. Third piece is governance. Make sure you know the governance. Make sure you know the ownership. If you're going to be in a blockchain with multiple participants, how are you going to share the equity? How are you going to share the value? If the blockchain goes down, who's liable? Who's going to be sued? Okay, so think about that stuff. How you integrate them and then run the platform. And what we say is that, well, actually we don't, Gartner said this. They said for this you need kind of 5 key skills. Okay, you got to have business on board, you got to have security and risk, you got to have technology, and you got to have integration capability. You also need strategy. I often think about this like a chair. It's got 5 legs. You take away one of those legs, the chair falls over. Okay, or it might be rocky. You take away another one, it'll definitely fall over. Okay, you need all 5 when you're going to do something. So, am I talking rubbish? Maybe I am. But this is what we've learned from real project experience. We've done this multiple places. This is just an example of what we've been working on. We did regulatory reporting on blockchain, working with some of the largest asset services in the world. We built that in collaboration with Irish funds. We've done trade finance with the Hong Kong Monetary Authority. As I said, that will go to production next year. We've built that with HSBC, Standard Chartered, the Bank of East Asia, and 5 other banks. Time stamping, we've done with Intesa San Paulo. Intesa, one of the most advanced banks, I would say, on blockchain, and particularly the Bitcoin blockchain in the world today. We built fund distribution, completely eliminating the TA, so the transfer agent or the third-party administrator gone. We've done that with AppVip. That was built with CaixaBank Millennial and Citi in Portugal. We use the Ethereum network. That will also go to production next year. We're currently talking to the Bank of Portugal about that. And Bank of Ireland, we've done many projects with. One of the most interesting was Single Customer View, where we pooled and aggregated data from 200 production systems to create one single customer view for MiFID II reporting. So, to conclude, because I'm out of time, I'm going to leave you with this thought, okay? And this maybe it's our advice, but it's definitely my advice. Think big, right, in blockchain. Think really, really big, right? Think massive, right? But start small, like tiny, okay? You got to be brave. You got to be really brave, because you have to imagine the future. Don't just focus on re-engineering a crap process today. You got to really imagine the future. Leverage your existing assets. What the banks don't realize is, or some of them realize, is that they have huge cost centers that actually, if you spun them on their head, they could be revenue generators. An example is your HR function. You've got so much information coming through that. On a blockchain, could you be utilizing that information? Could you be selling it to people in the recruitment industry, for example? Could you be selling your data? Who knows in a blockchain world? But make sure you can clearly articulate ROI. That's the most important piece. Because if you're going to get financial backing, if you're going to get the CFO's input, the COO's input, just be able to articulate that. So I'm going to leave it there. I'm here until about 12 o'clock today. I'll be on the Deloitte stand. Straight after this, I'm going down to answer any questions on the breakout fireside chat piece. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure presenting. And as I say, if there are any questions, please approach me later. Thank you.